Hello, fifth grade Hosnites. How are we doing today? This is Ms. Wheel. I'm just touching base with you guys. I wanted to go through the PowerPoint with you in case there's anything that is worth a little bit more explanation. Be aware that I will not be able to cover everything because I need to make this recording pretty short in order to put online. But I just wanted to share with you the next few slides. So we're going to go through slides 12 through 18 really quick. And I would like to share my screen with you. So let's do that right now. Okay, here we are. I'm just going to put it on the slideshow so we can see it. All right, so it's all around you. What are we talking about? Remember that we're talking about animals, we're talking about the environment, we've been talking about adaptations. So as far as this slide is concerned, let's read together. As far as we know, Earth is the only planet that we can live on. Water and air are two important reasons why life is possible on Earth. So what is important about this slide? Well, first of all, there are two very important vocabulary words here, and you can see them highlighted in yellow. They say the environment, which I would write this in my notes, the definitions for both of these. The environment is all of the living and non-living things in nature. Usually when we talk about the environment, we talk about the natural environment. We don't really talk about, our regular environments, but this would be my environment here, my home, because that's where I'm spending my time. It contains living things such as me and all the people that live in my households. And it also contains a lot of non-living things like TV, speakers, notebooks, things like that. But anything that's around me, that's part of my environment. The other important vocab word to see is at the bottom of the page. It's called ecosystem. What is an ecosystem? An ecosystem is a community of living things, along with non-living things again, that interact in a certain area. So we're talking about specifics. So we can talk about the environment, we could talk about the whole world as an environment. We can talk about our natural environment, our wetlands area, which is where we live. We live in the Everglades or towards the beach, right? The natural environment. We can also talk about the environment as being your house or your household or your classroom or your school or your bedroom or wherever it is that you're studying right now. So basically when we're thinking about an ecosystem, we're thinking definitely more natural, okay? And we're thinking about all of the living things, so plants and animals, fungi, protista, all of the cool bacteria, even viruses, right? All the living things that are in a certain area, along with all of the non-living things, the things that they need in order to survive. So think about us. What are some non-living things that we need in order to survive? Water, air, protection, right? Are these things coming back to you? Food? Okay, so so all the living and non-living things together. All right, so here are your vocab words. There are 3 of them. It's very important that you study these 3 because oftentimes, especially with environment and ecosystem, we can sometimes confuse them because they both start with E. So an environment is all of the living and non-living things in nature, and an ecosystem is a community of living and non-living things around them. So if you look at the circle, the red, yellow, and orange circles over on the left-hand side of the screen, you'll see it says ecosystem. You can see that there are living things there, right? You can see there's a community of plants, animals that are living in the area, things like that. And you can see the non-living things as well, such as minerals, nutrients, water, air, moisture, and other things like that. Now, the third word we're going to want to talk about is called community, because an ecosystem is a community of living things. So what is a community? A community is a group of living things working together. So think about your community. Maybe you live in a gated community. I don't know, some of us do. So if you live in a community, you are in your home surrounded by other humans, right? Because we're humans, surrounded by other humans, and then we all kind of live together and we work together. So you can think of that as a community. You can have a community of ducks. You can have a community of bacteria. You can have a community of humans. You can have a community of wild dogs. It really doesn't matter what we're talking about, but they have to be living and they have to be living in a certain area together. Okay? All right, so some important things when we're thinking about environmental changes. So the environment changes all the time. If there's one thing that's certain in life, it's that things change. And that's true of our world too. So our environment changes all the time. The environment can change for a bunch of different reasons, and these changes can happen very quickly, like in the case of, for example, a forest fire may change your environment very quickly, or it could sometimes be a very slow change. For example, after that forest fire ends, it's going to take a long time for plants to start coming back into that area, growing, and animals to start coming back into that area too. So the environment can change for a bunch of different reasons. But today we're going to talk about the three main reasons why our environment can change. First of all, other living things. If you're living, you're going to affect your environment in some way, shape, or form. So first of all, animals, they can actually change the environment. So by inviting different new species into the area that wasn't meant to be here, we can change that. They give you a few examples in the slide, but I'd like to talk about one that happens right here in Florida. We had a new exotic species introduced not too long ago, iguanas. Iguanas are actually not native to Florida. You probably see them all over the place. And they're becoming what we call invasive and, invasive at this point, because what invasive means, it sounds like invading. They've invaded Florida, they're coming in, they're living here, and they're changing the environment. How are they changing the environment? Well, actually, they're not that bad for this environment here in Florida, but what they are doing, and maybe you notice this, is they actually live in burrows. So they dig down into the ground and create holes underground. This can lead to our environment changing because now we have like sinkholes and potholes everywhere, thanks to the animals reconstructing the ground. So that's a perfect example of how the environment changes thanks to new animals coming into the area. Also, by removing animals, we could have the same sort of effect. So certain animals, they change the environment on an everyday basis, and if you remove those animals, could be a problem. It could really affect our whole ecosystem. The next type of environmental change I'd like to talk about is about natural events. Natural events can change the environment, such as storms, wildfires, volcanoes, droughts. So a drought is a time with not a lot of rain, and floods, where there's time of a lot of rain. You can think about how those natural phenomena have the ability to change the environment. For example, if you are involved in the reading of my daily posts on our Edmodo group, I recently posted about a change in the environment that I saw about how the Everglades caught on fire about 4 years ago. And it was burned up very quickly. Within a matter of just a few days, everything was burned and it looked pretty miserable, and I was really depressed. But 2 weeks later, I came back to see that the environment had re-healed itself. So the environment has the ability to change itself and heal itself. So that's the good thing about natural events, is that usually that they can kind of bounce back from that. Humans, of course, we have a lot of impact on our environment. Think about what we're doing in our own environments. We're building tons of houses, we're digging underground, we're destroying aquifers, which is going to be bad for our water. We've talked about that previously in class. But you could probably see a lot of ways that humans are impacting our environment now that we're not really actually kind of allowed to go out into nature. Now that we're in quarantine, you can actually see that in certain areas of the world, air quality has gotten better, like in China and LA. There are dolphins returning to Venice, which is really amazing. So that means the water's getting cleaner. So why is it that everything is starting to come back now? Well, now because we're becoming a little bit more hands-off. We're not affecting the environment with pollution and other kind of more negative human impacts. We're impacting the environment more positively by kind of leaving it alone like it should be. So the ways that we affect the environment, we're going to start seeing those once we start getting out of quarantine. We're going to start seeing our world changing again. Okay, here's a few examples. Okay, volcanoes have a short-term effect. Obviously, once the volcano spurts up and shoots lava all over the ground, it actually gets rid of all the plants and animals that were living there. They're going to die. Oops, sorry about that. And it basically covers the ground in ash, and the lava cooling will create new igneous rock that may cover the ground. So that's a very quick change to the environment. And then there's going to be a long-term effect of that. and that is the regrowth of all the plants. A drought, we talked about how when it's dry, forest fires can happen. I talked about that in my response. And a forest fire, of course, fires are pretty fast and they damage things pretty fast. They can affect our environment very rapidly as well. Okay. Interestingly, for those of you who haven't read, if you're looking at that part about fires, I just want to point this out. Some trees have seeds that only open when burned. Interesting. That's a very cool adaptation for plant organisms that live in dry areas. Because if there's going to be a fire, well, it makes sense to somehow make advantage of that fire. Some plants actually grow better after fire than not. Fun facts. I'm not going to watch this video with you, but I think you should. It's a very interesting video about how humans particularly have changed the environment a lot, especially they give the example of talking about New York City. So talking about how New York City goes from its original environment, which is actually a swamp environment, into now a bustling city. So definitely check that out. It's a really good example of some ways that humans are affecting the environment. And we're really affecting it a lot. When changes happen in the environment, and of course, remember, there will always be change in the environment, an organism or species of organisms needs to do something in order to respond to the change in the environment. So either they could migrate or move, right? If the environment is no longer able to be lived in, right? Remember, you have adaptations for living in a specific environment. If those environmental factors are changed, you might not be suited to live in that environment anymore. You may need to move to another area. So either you might need to migrate or move, or you can adapt, right? You can change your behaviors. It's not as easy to change physical aspects. That takes many generations in order to do, and it'll take a long time. But if you can change, for example, your instincts or your behaviors in order to survive in that new environment with all the changes that it's been going through, you can change to fit in better and hopefully survive better. Unfortunately, if you don't move or you don't change to adapt to this environment, there's only one other option, and that is death, right? If you can't change, you don't survive, right? If you don't adapt, you can't survive. So unfortunately, if organisms can't survive, can't change or move to another area, they will go extinct. And unfortunately, we're seeing a lot of extinctions happen in recent past due to human impact. So it is something that we can change. It is something that we can do something about. This video, another really good video from Crash Course. I really like Crash Course. Definitely check them out. But this one talks about how all living things change. Okay, so it's important. It's just kind of a reiteration of what we just talked about how if the environmental change occurs, you can either move, adapt, or you die. So definitely check that out. She gives a lot of good examples in there. And that's basically what we'll be talking about. So we're going to stop right there. And if anybody has any questions about anything that we've been over or anything interesting from the movies, feel free to post on the Edmodo group or reach out to me through email or Edmodo message. All right, everybody, good luck studying, and I will hopefully see you very soon. All right.